Good day, viewers. Welcome to 30 Minutes, our interactive program on Trust Television. I'm Manir Dan Ali, and my guest today is Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, who retired as a permanent secretary in the Federal Civil Service, was INEC secretary, and many other things before he retired fully, and has been in the forefront of the Northern Elders Forum. He also lectures in a university here in Abuja. Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
You are coming straight from delivering a lecture in a university. Why are you so interested in lecturing after? I mean, I know you started as a lecturer in the University of Sokoto. You went into the into the State Civil Service in Kaduna, then the Federal Civil Service. So you are going back to, is it your first love?
Yes, it is. I love teaching. But more importantly, I like staying in touch with younger generation. I like paying back in any way I can. But the most important thing is to see that you're actually impacting positively on a young person who is likely to grow up with some values, with an improved capacity to think as an adult, with a sense of responsibility. And to share, as you said, we've been around for a while. We have done many things in government, out of government, now in politics. And there are things you can teach university students now that they will not be able to read in newspapers or in textbooks or in journals, particularly about governance, about politics. I teach public policy, I teach public administration, I teach political science. Some of the things that we can say to a student, you won't read it in a book.
Because you've been in the academia and you've been in the field, you have the experience of both ones.
Yes, the academia prepares you with the ability to be able to impart knowledge, to research, to understand what is essential and to teach. The experience in public service allows you to combine both theory and practice. And to be honest, it's a rare combination. And if you can do it, it's very demanding. But if you can do it, the student benefits a lot. You read the book, but a lot of the books are written by theoreticians, academics who have remained entirely in the academic area. On the other hand, people who have practiced public policy formulation or implementation, people who have practiced governance, don't teach. And you know, in public service, there are many, many things you never say.
I've heard from some people who have been lecturers in the past who now, of recent, went back to lecturing, and they are saying...
Like Professor Jega?
Yes, some of them are saying it's a different ball game, that the students of today are not that serious about learning. They just want to get the certificate. Is that your experience?
I'm afraid I have to say yes, to a very large degree. The truth is that, like everything else in this country, the standards have collapsed. I think that, unfortunately, the deregulation of education that is allowing private sector to run universities has had two negative consequences. One is that substantially children of the rich and the powerful and the elite have moved away from public education to private education. It happened at primary level. The moment you privatized primary school education and secondary school education, the rich and the powerful started moving their children away from public schools. And that is why today you see local education authorities and government secondary schools, and they will never see the child of anybody influential. So that was one of them. Secondly, I think on the whole, the quality of Nigerian academic institutions has collapsed. It has been politicized, compromised by mediocrity, by the tendency for academics to try and choose and seek for shortcuts into juicy positions, the clamor for leadership within the university, the terribly vicious fights about becoming vice chancellor, and then when you get there, you now begin to serve interests of people who made you vice chancellor. It's a horrible, horrible collapse.
And is the same thing with the private universities? Because I assume you are teaching at a private university.
Yes, I am. I'm teaching in about in 3 universities. 2 are, one is private, 2 are in all in visiting capacities. It's the same. In many of the universities, private universities, the academic staff would not compare favorably with academic staff of government universities. Government universities have, I think, maybe because they've been on the ground for a longer period, maybe because they've been exposed better.
They have more depth, you mean, or quality? Or
they are better. The standards are higher for being an academic, and I think they have a little bit more respect for academic standards. Sometimes, unfortunately, in some, not where I teach. Where I teach, we try to maintain standards, even if I have to say so myself. But in a few universities, you find that a large number of the academic staff are either people who have been unable to fit into conventional government universities, or people who have suffered some setbacks, one way or the other, either academic or personal, or people who are looking for a short trip to the top. You can't cut corners with academics. If you do that, it will show. And it will show in the manner in which you impart education and knowledge on the students. But too many parents don't want to pay attention to that. They send their children to private universities substantially, one, because they want them to avoid all these interruptions caused by ASU strike, and 2, because they think that is a better option than sending them to Cyprus or to Turkey or to the UK. And so they send them to private universities. And not many of them pay attention to the quality of the faculty, the quality of the teaching. And the students, I'm not sure, complain too much. If you are able to graduate in a year, 4 years, rather than in 6 or 7 years, because ASU keeps going on strike, they're not likely to complain.
And what is their outlook on Nigeria? I mean, given all the problems that we have, because there's so much negativity around, and I wonder whether it's permeated the young people that you are teaching.
It's horrible, man. It's horrible. I don't know whether Nigerians really understand how alienated the young are from the rest of society. Even the children of the elite, even the children of the rich and the privileged that we teach are very, very angry. And I also am very, very active in social media. So I relate also with young people. It's, of all the problems we have in this country, for me, the most threatening in the long term is the gulf that exists between young people who are poorly educated or not educated at all. They have no skills, or they have very little skills, no competencies, because there is no opportunity to give them any competencies, no hope, because everything, every index that you know that you will use to measure whether the country is developing or underdeveloping or crumbling is showing a negative trend. And their numbers are increasing. Even when they go to school, they graduate with bad education. If 10 students graduate from this university, from Nigerian universities now, private and public, all of them, at least 8 of them will spend a minimum of 2 or 3 years before they get a job, if they get a job. They have no faith in their country. They don't know history. Nobody teaches Nigerian students history. Nobody. Your child can go to school from primary 1 until they graduate in final year university without reading a word of history, Nigerian history. So they don't know anything about Nigeria.
Why is it so?
Because government made it so. Unless you choose to read history as a subject. As a subject.
But we hear all sorts of new ideas, like start teaching even road safety issues in universities. There are some common courses that are being taught in university. Isn't history or an aspect of history, Nigerian history, one of them?
No, it isn't. I don't know anywhere else where they teach Nigerian history unless you actually you choose to read history as a major, or you choose some courses in history I'm talking about a deliberate policy of making sure that every Nigerian student who goes to school secondary school. You make it mandatory for them. The circumstances under which we live make it necessary to do so. We know so little about each other. This is not how you and I grew up. I can close my eyes and tell you where Oka is. I can tell you there is no part of this country I have not. I can tell you the struggles that we went through, the good things this country did, the bad things we did, the mistakes we made, all the great things that we did. I can tell you how the 36 state structure is. I'm not saying young people should know this, but young people should know something about their history. They don't.
But even children, I know my daughter in primary school, they come back singing about all the states, the capitals, and
state and capitals.
You mean it doesn't go deeper than that?
No, I'm afraid it doesn't. And by the time they finish that class, she has forgotten about it. I'm talking about real teaching of history, forcing Nigerian students to study, for instance. How did this country came to be? What was Nigeria before the British came? Were we just living on trees? Were we just we were empires. We were communities. We lived with each other. We interacted with each other. We traded with each other. We fought with each other. We lived together with each other. The British did not found Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. They didn't invent us. We were here before they came, and we lived together. We fought together. So there was a country. There was the people that became Nigeria were civilized people, substantially advanced, and we need to know this. What happened in 1914? Is it such a bad thing that some parts of the country is painting it out?
Well, they say mistake of 1914. That is what you tend to see in the social media.
Everything was a mistake.
All the division and the negativity.
Everything was a mistake. Being conquered was a mistake. Everybody is a victim of colonialism. We were sitting minding our business, our great-great-grandfathers. 1900, the British came, conquered us and said, okay, you people from there to there, and from there to there, you are Nigeria. That's the name you are going to be, and you will do whatever we tell you. When somebody conquers you, you don't have a choice over what he does with you. So all of us collectively were victims of colonialism. Everything that happened right up to the point when we got independence, including the decision over what date of the month of the year will become independent, was British.
But there was some consultation with local leaders.
Yes, and there was some input. One of them, for instance, which now those of us from the north are reminding people, is that it wasn't just a rollover. The British began to involve leaders from the north, from the south, from the east, from the west, in terms of discussions over decolonization. The British understood from the end of the Second World War that it was imperative that they decolonize.
After what happened in India?
After what happened in India, after our people went and helped them to put out the fire in the Second World War, our eyes were open. We saw the white man as just another human being. We shoot him, he would die. You shoot him, he would be injured and he would be crying. We went to Ceylon, we went to Sri Lanka, we went to India.
Burma.
We fought the Second World War alongside the British. We saw them as free people, and we saw them as human beings. And we came back here and said, but why should these people be ruling us? Why should they be governing? And they knew. They began to prepare their colonies for decolonization. And it happened here in this country too. And part of that process was the grooming of an elite that will take over from them. And it also involved some consultations.
And so isn't there some sense of deja vu that now with all the yes, after return to self-rule, so to say, by Nigerians, of Nigeria, here we are now again more divided probably than we were at independence, and people looking for all sorts of solutions?
I think it's more than deja vu. It's a tragedy. And again, you have to go back to a generation, 2 generations that don't know anything about what triggered the Civil War, the pains of fighting a war, the sacrifices and the supreme and very commendable decisions that were taken to bring it as quickly as possible to an end, and reconciliation, rehabilitation, reconstruction, all those things. These people like Nnamdi Kanu and Sunday Igboho and some of the people roaming around saying we want an end to Nigeria, they don't know anything about this. And nobody taught them, nobody thought it was important to make sure that Nigerians understand their country. That we have come a long way. This country has very, very deep roots. These roots cannot just be uprooted. And now you hear people glibly talking about, oh, the country must go. If we don't have our own way, we don't want to be in Nigeria again. We've had these arguments many, many times before. During the colonial days, in some of the arguments leading up to the independence, regional groups used to go and meet on constitutional matters, sometimes in Nigeria, sometimes in there is no part of the country that has not at one time or the other said, listen, 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 we don't want to be part of this country.
But for the issue to be coming up now again, something must be wrong. There must be a trigger. There must be maybe accumulation of factors that are all coming to head now.
I think the quality of leadership has declined consistently since 1999. The quality of national leadership has declined. The military did some very, very serious damage to the quality of the political leadership. For the period they stayed there, for their destruction of the politicians, their belittling of the politicians, the refusal to allow politicians to grow and develop and make mistakes and make this and amend those mistakes. That cost us. Everything has to be allowed to develop. But the prolonged stay of the military stunted and underdeveloped the growth and development of the Nigerian politician and the political culture, a democratic culture. That's the first one. The second one is as a consequence of the first one. What you saw emerging at the end of 1999 was a political class that was substantially the product of a military, lacked confidence, lacked competence, and was living under different values. It saw power as an end in itself substantially. Corruption had already eaten into it, and corruption had moved from a marginal value into now a core value. And public funds and private funds had become the same thing, and you invest in politics basically as a business. And therefore, public funds are basically yours to do as you wish.
But how else could it have been? I mean, you are accused and saying that they are like surrogates of the military. Since it was the military that midwifed the transition to civil rule, there must be some umbilical cord in some way. So how different could it have been?
Well, like I said, there's no point going back over this. The military took this country over in 1966, and until 1999, which is almost 33 years, I think they were out of power for only about 4 years.
Yes,
so basically, yes, basically the military had governed this country for about more than 30 years. They couldn't have been any
But they
different.
didn't govern in isolation. I mean, the civilians, I mean, in a state you just have the military head, maybe one or two in the cabinet, and the rest are civilians.
No. A military rule is a military rule. And if you don't, if that doesn't make sense, compare it to a democratic system where the leadership is elected. The leadership lives under laws. Leadership lives under a constitution that it is bound by. The military could simply wake up tomorrow and make a law, and they are not accountable to anybody. It's a terrible damage. And for a period of 30-something years, it was bound to leave a mark. And it left that mark. And we still haven't recovered from it. And it makes it all the more reason, it makes it cheaper. It has cheapened the country. People think anybody can become a governor. Anybody can become a president. And the citizen thinks, who is this man? 2-3 years ago, he was just a businessman pushing for money. And now suddenly he's a governor. And he knows absolutely nothing about governance. So the quality of leadership has declined and declined and declined to a point now. An American president said, if I have 9 hours to cut a tree, I will spend the first 6 hours sharpening my axe. In preparation, he would prepare.
Yeah.
Our politicians, the people who determine our fate now in this country, nothing has prepared them to lead except personal ambition and personal wealth. They want more money. And maybe he's run out of ideas about what to do and he wants to be a politician. That's all.
But some say the leadership is a reflection of the followership, that society get the kind of leaders that
no. I think
that essentially is the reflection of.
I don't know where that comes. I know that you and I are Muslims, and Allah said you will live under the kind of leadership you deserve. and we have to respect that. But he also said, strive and work to be good citizens so that you can get better leadership. He said so. So this rather vacuous statement that the leadership people have is what they deserve is not true. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a democratic process. We would not have succeeded in removing Jonathan and putting Buhari in power in 2015. The Nigeria that had Jonathan all the way to 2015 is the same Nigeria that President Buhari inherited. Same country. And he made it worse.
That's what I wanted to ask.
And he made it worse.
The nature of the leadership after Jonathan any better?
No, it's not. And that is the disappointing thing about the President Buhari governorship, governors. He had a chance to make this country considerably better. He came on the power of three things. He was going to improve security. At that time, the biggest threat we had was Boko Haram. President Eradua had the statesmanship and the courage to tackle Niger Delta insurgency and the militancy substantially for it to be downgraded as a threat. Boko Haram was the biggest threat we had. He said he will fix the economy and he will eliminate corruption and get jobs for young people. He didn't do any one of them. We are more insecure now. The economy is worse than it has ever been. Cost of living is, Nigerians have never lived under this kind of cost of living. More young people are out of jobs and angry and disenchanted, and you see all the NSAS thing. Go to Southeast. I'm not sure even this government understands exactly what IPOB is. IPOB is not so much about Kanu and what Kanu is doing and the diaspora Igbo are doing. It's actually about the people who live in the Southeast who have absolutely nothing to live or to work for. The system has turned virtually all of them into either marginal criminals or real criminals. The law doesn't exist there. There is no leadership there. That's what IPOB is.
So you are talking about at the level of the state, not even at the federal level. The 5 eastern states have failed their people because the level of misgovernance in that area is unbelievable. But even at the risk of creating caricatures, the truth about it is that the Igbo has never really lived off the state. He works on his own. But if the economy has crashed to a point where he can't even seek for his own, because the environment is so poor, the economy is all crashed, and you have all these young people, artisans have no jobs, traders have no jobs. All the people who would invest in the Southeast are investing elsewhere because it is unsafe and insecure to stay in the Southeast. Where do you go? Where do you move? Very interesting point there, Dr. Hakeem. We'll resume the conversation shortly. We'll pause here, viewers, and we'll resume shortly. Welcome back from the break. As viewers may recall, I am having this conversation with Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, a retired Federal Permanent Secretary and currently lecturing in a number of universities here in Abuja and elsewhere, as well as the National Publicity Secretary of the Northern Elders Forum. If I come back to you, Dr. Hakeem, you are mentioning about the almost breakdown of governance in the southeastern states, which you are blaming for some of the things that are happening there. But is it only in the southeast that things are not going well at the subnational level, at the state level? Because Nigerians tend to criticize and save all their fire for the federal government. They are not looking at what is happening at the state level, where things are really awful in most cases.
You know, I mentioned that one of the tragedies of this country is the decline in the quality of leadership. People who exercise huge powers without any preparation, they don't know what governance is. They don't know what accountability is. They don't, the line between what they can do and what they cannot do, what the law says is they are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do, a culture that compels them to be accountable and to be available and to listen to people doesn't exist. Out of the 36 governors that we have, I don't know if one or two ever bothers to to speak to in one form or the other, to speak to the public. They create their own world and they live in it. One consequence of that is that substantially the population is on its own. And you see evidence of that. The bandits and the kidnappers in the north didn't just spring up. 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't know this level of banditry. But things were happening. The government didn't want to know. Cattle were being rustled. Fulani were being uprooted entirely from the ecosystem, from their culture, from the system, the only system that they knew. Real, law-abiding, simple-minded Fulani. People said to the government, something is going on. The government didn't do anything about it. Because either they think it was just a passing phase or this is not a problem. Kanu realized, is clever enough to realize that there is so much grievance in the southeast. Young people who can't leave the southeast cannot earn a living in the southeast. They've gone to school, there is no job to do. They are being told every day the Igbo is the most badly, poorly treated Nigerian because he has only 5 states, he has never been a president, and Nigeria has not forgiven the Igbo for fighting a civil war, and therefore the Igbo man is the target for everybody. In the southwest, young Nigerians are being told this is the most developed part of Nigeria, but what do we get? We are isolated. We are being treated as second-class citizens. They are politicians, and on the whole, there is just unbelievable level of stealing of public funds. Money that should go into education, into infrastructure, into encouraging education and businesses for young people to do in. It's just disappearing. Infrastructure is crumbling. People haven't taken stock of just how much damage the last 10 to 15 years have done for this country. It's unbelievable. And to recover that, it's not easy.
What is to be done?
I think first we have to hope that this country will survive until the 2023 elections. And I'm really serious. We need to survive.
Why are you talking of
because the foundations are frankly, they attacked the only link between Kaduna and Abuja. Excuse me. This is the link.
Rail line.
The rail line.
Yeah.
This is about the only link that for most of the north. For the elites. For the elite.
Because there's the Abuja Kaduna Expressway, which tends to have incidents of kidnappings, and the big guns have moved to the trend.
And the big guns moved. And then the government never read the writing on the wall. If you go on the train and you see the number of ministers and generals and everybody who matters on that train, if you know what you're doing, you would say this is a disaster waiting to happen. 2-hour train of unprotected rail line, of the cream of the Nigerian society in it, because they cannot be on the road. The people with responsibility to fix the problem didn't fix the problem, they created another problem rather than creating a solution. If going from Abuja to Kaduna represents a security challenge, fix that security challenge. Don't create an alternative to that, because this same problem that has kept you away from the road will follow you to that rail. And this is what we saw. And this is what we're seeing. It shows you the shallowness of the Nigerian politics. So you need to fix, first, the country has to survive. We have to survive the incursions of banditry and kidnapping, which in spite of all these things you are hearing in the south, in Borno, you have Borno, Yobe and Adamawa. Boko Haram is still active, is still a real problem there. Now you have banditry and kidnapping in most parts of the northwest. In the north central, you have so many killings, virtually every kind of threat exists in the north central. Community versus community, you have the kidnappers, you have the insurgents. In the southeast, IPOB is literally strangulating a whole region of the country, the 5 states.